Hey everybody, Shaman Shane with Shit My Shaman Says, the podcast edition. I've got an amazing guest with me today in the area that we live. She's an icon. She's been at this as long or longer than I have. Incredibly gifted individual with a very diverse portfolio. Please welcome to the show, Linda Eastburn.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Let's just start with some credentialing. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you're all about. Give us a little bit of the background bio. I know there's a lot.
Well, in this field, I started way back in late 80s, something like that. I'm going to tell my age here. You make me sound like an ancient human being, but I started with just some simple things, exercises, meditations, things like that. And then when I started becoming more public, and that was a long haul. It was a lot of years of not being very public with the intuitive work that I was doing. But I started with hypnosis. I became a practitioner and then started teaching hypnosis. Went from there into being an intuitive and then eventually specialized in being a health intuitive. Went on from there, to teach that to people, teaching people how to be health intuitives. And that was primarily what I did until I became a filmmaker back in 2018, I think. Then I started making documentary films. In the middle of all of that was a lot of media stuff too. I had a radio show, a media just cable show for a short period of time too. But whenever I was really in the heyday of my intuitive work, it was between mid-90s and about 2015. I was traveling all over the country and teaching people how to be intuitives and doing intuitive sessions, things like that. And now I'm kind of getting back into this. So I have recently written a book called Spy Your Way to Power and Success. And with that, it's about manifestation. So that's like another leg onto the work that I have previously done. And it is really about kind of back engineering my personal life, because I've just had so many wonderful opportunities that have just fallen in my lap. And I used to say these are like the silver platter of opportunity, but now what are you going to do with it? I think actually you gave me that line once. I remember being at a party. I think the last time I saw you in person, we were both at a party, a birthday party. And I was sitting there, and I hadn't really launched that global thing yet, that I was going to do later on. And I remember you said, okay, now you've developed it. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
I remember you saying that to
That
me.
sounds very much like me.
It was very much like you. And I thought, well, God, I don't know. What am I going to do with this, And so that was very encouraging. I went on to...
I think that there are a couple of really cool things before going farther, just from what you've said there, that I love. The idea of teaching people intuition. I get it all the time. It's the, oh, do you think I have any intuitive ability? And it's like, well, yes, because you're alive, you do. Now let's figure out which sense you're the strongest in. Let's figure out how you process it. Let's figure out what your language with spirit is. Let's get into all these different things. And I think it's so important. I tell people all the time, and I'll be curious your perspective, there's nothing different about me and anyone else except that I've devoted my life to this. I put in the time. I put in the study. I've worked with different people. I've dedicated my life to learning about this. It's not that I'm some special, gifted, whatever. I don't even like the word gift.
I don't either. I never use the word gift. I use the word skill.
Yes, exactly. It's a developed skill set.
Yeah. And for me too, it was like when I was learning to do this, I realized that it piqued my curiosity enough to devote my time to it. Now, the one thing that I'm going to say, maybe slightly different than you, is I understood that I had a great sensitivity to my body. And your body is where your intuition speaks to you. And so you have to, if you don't have that, you have to develop it. You have to become sensitive to just the tiniest little perceptions that your heart's going to say to you, your gut's going to tell you, because eventually what I did was just turn that into a dialogue. Ask a question, listen to what my heart says. If I would speak the words, what I recognized was my heart will tell me if I'm telling the truth or if I'm just making this up.
Yep.
So
see, and I like to take it to an analogy for people of singing. Some people are naturally born singers. Some people you don't want to listen to at all. Everybody can improve with voice lessons.
Right.
And so I've always approached it from that angle. And I love the way that you're talking about the body will talk to you. One of the reasons that I developed as a yoga teacher much later in my my shamanic path was trying to get people in touch with their own self. They're trying to figure out how to interact with their outer world, and they have no interaction in their inner world. And until you get all this shit right, none of that's going to make any sense.
Right. That's true. And we're taught from birth really to pay attention to external things, not internal things.
Yeah.
So we just don't have that frame of reference. I like what one remote viewer said, that we've been institutionalized to believe that it doesn't even exist.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Well,
so.
I tell the story all the time. You know my mother. We talked about that before we got on here. I was never told I had an imaginary friend. Mom would ask what they had to say. Right. And so I never had to unlearn that. And some people, we could get into, I'm sure, a very interesting conversation about spirit guides, guardian angels, higher self, the distinction between those things, or is there a distinction between those things? But ultimately, forming the dialogue, forming the language, and starting within, I think is absolutely the key.
Yeah, I think you have to do that. I mean, that's where all the information is.
Yeah, well, it's all the information, and it's also everything you're seeking. If you want joy, become joy. If you want satisfaction, learn to be satisfied. If you want peace in your outer world, figure out where you're in conflict with yourself.
Right.
Because that's how it all shifts. That's how it all changes. So you mentioned dating you. I started doing readings for the public. Now, when I say the public, it was friends and family, and you know how this sort of thing grows, especially in the area that we're in, at the age of 15.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it was purely because a reader that I had been seeing, my mother had been seeing at the time, told me I was a reincarnated shaman and I was supposed to continue this work. Well, at that point I was 12, mind you. And so I was getting attention and I thought it was great. And so, of course, I was very interested because it was focused on me. But then by the age of 15, I started doing this, and I had somehow developed enough of an awareness that my belief came from seeing it work. It wasn't necessarily that I had such a belief in what I was doing to begin with. And so this would have been in the mid-'80s. You referenced that.
Yes.
And I'm sure, this is just a nostalgia moment for me, but I'm sure you remember like the original Out on a Limb, Shirley MacLaine.
Oh, yes, very much.
I have so much respect for that woman and what she went through in her career because of it and everything, and she stuck with it. But a lot of the things that she taught in the book movie, I still try to teach people today.
Right.
It's the Shane version. It's my language or my approach to it, but it's the same kind of stuff, especially the journey work and the out-of-body experiences and all of that sort of thing. So that's history. Tell me about present. Where is your focus? What gets you fired up, and what is your drive right now?
Well, when I wrote the book, Spy Your Way to Power and Success, which is my latest thing, and then I put the course together. It's about a 2-year program which helps people to understand manifestation. I back-engineered my life, and it's like, okay, how did I do that? What happened that made me aware of that? And I'll give an example. This is probably the most prominent example I can do. My bread and butter was always real estate. That was why I didn't get into this as early as you did at 15. I was about 40 by the time I got into this. But I'd had 20 years at that point of, work and, establishing a career in real estate. So that's what I did, real estate investing mostly. So there was this.
I would like to go on record as saying you're far too nice to be a realtor.
I'm not a realtor.
Okay.
I was a real estate investor.
Okay.
But we had a brokerage. We did have a brokerage. We mostly did our own investments, and we worked with other investors. But we weren't out there pounding the pavement trying to sell properties, to people. That wasn't our goal. We were investors. So we had arrived at, this was way back. I mean, goodness, we had only been in business a few years doing this when suddenly there was this large farm. It was 222 acres, 222.22. That's relevant only because I'll tell you later on why that was relevant. It had an 8,000 square foot house on it. The house was huge. It had 3 stories, a pool, large. It had been a horse ranch. It had this beautiful wrought iron gate in the beginning. Oh. At the opening of it, it went up a hill with trees on each side. It was just picturesque. It was absolutely beautiful. It was going to auction. We went to a lot of auctions. So this house was going to auction. So we decided, okay, we'll just preview it. It was way out of our price range. This thing has sold at least twice for $1 million. This was back, they were in the early 80s, so we're talking a period of time when, or probably late 80s, but a period of time when that would be worth maybe 5-6 million today. So it was, but it was way out of our price range. We didn't have that kind of cash sitting around. And at an auction, you have to pay for it in 3 weeks. Period.
It's right there.
Is you got to do this.
You just did a deal.
So we decided to preview it anyway because that's what we did. It's just what we did. So we went out, we viewed it. We were driving around the land, and all of a sudden, I got what I call a download. And it was this intuitive impression that just came in, and I couldn't get the words out fast enough. And it was like, this is going to sell for $300,000. I remember sitting up in my seat, literally saying, "This is going to sell for $300,000." And my husband looked over at me and said, "If this sells for $300,000, we need to buy it." We didn't have $300,000, but because I got that download, we went to the bank. We got approved for the loan. We also learned how much money it was going to require for the down payment. We didn't have that either.
Right. Yeah.
We had to have it in 3 weeks. You have to understand. We had to have this in 3 weeks. So suddenly, now this is the beauty of the synchronicity of how mind communicates, how intuition works, and how synchronicities work. And this is what I build into the SPY program, the SPY technique. So suddenly, here we are, and we get a call from a gentleman that lived next door to a small Quonset hut garage we owned. It wasn't worth a lot, but it was a little Quonset hut garage. Suddenly he decided he had to have it. He had cash. He needed to close that week. It's like, good to go. Then another guy calls. It was a little storage unit, a storage building we had on a little piece of land. He had looked at it about a year before, decided he didn't want it at that time. Now suddenly he has to have it, and he's got cash, and he will, has to close that week. We had the exact amount down payment for this property. So we go to the auction, and we say, if this sells for $300,000, it's going to be a miracle because this is worth way more than $300,000. So we go to the auction. Bid is going up. We're holding the bid at $300,000, and the auctioneer says sold, and we bought it for $300,000. So it's like, it's amazing that just the last couple of years I really started thinking about this. I mean, I always knew that was an amazing moment, but it's like, how did that happen?
Right.
What is the science behind that?
Yes.
What is the energy that's transferring that makes me know this and then enables us in advance to be able to go ahead and proceed and go through with this? So
instead of stopping at, wow, why wow?
Right. And so I back engineered that, and along with many, many, many other moments. And I think I just told you how my Bigfoot podcast got started. A similar thing, it wasn't exactly that dynamic, but it was very similar. It was like seeing that opportunity in advance, intuitively knowing it, even though someone else brought me the Bigfoot information. This came as a download. It doesn't really matter where it comes from. It's still information that you're holding intuitively.
Right.
That doesn't make sense to you at the time, but you can, if you put the pieces together, it makes total sense.
I'm real big on act on the part you do understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because so many of us want to understand the entire process, and I have said it in my own sense of humor. If Spirit says, put your foot here, but you want to know the next 17 footsteps, they're sitting there going, we just told you the thing to do. Do that. We'll tell you the next one after that. And a lot of times it's going on faith. I don't mean to hijack your thought, but I wanted to share this just because it's moved the decimal point quite a bit, but I wanted to latch on to your download statement. When my first macaw, my parrot, died, the first one I had, I decided that I wanted to get a different one. I had a blue and gold. I wanted a scarlet because I didn't want to be reminded of Loki. And so I'm sitting at work one day, and I get an email from my mother. And she was working at the time. This is many years ago. And the first part of it was blah, 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 good morning, and all the stuff. And then there's this paragraph in the middle where she says, the bird that you will have will be the same blue and gold type. You need to go to the pet store. She knows nothing about this, by the way. Nothing about this. Go to the pet store on Sunshine. Go in and tell them that you're willing to take in the bird that they just brought back, that they had housed, that didn't work out, that has a bad attitude because you and it will get along, blah, 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 all these details. And ends with, it will cost $600 when it should be $2,000, and just go do this. And then the next paragraph is, I have no idea what I just typed.
Yeah.
I knew the store she was talking about.
Yeah.
She didn't. I went there the next day. I walked in, I handed them a business card that said intuitive reader. I thought it might help the process. And I told them the story. And they looked at me and they go, how did you know? We got that bird back in just today. We haven't even advertised this. We haven't marketed it. And I said, well, the bird and I are supposed to, it's a thing. Can I meet it? And they got welding gloves and helmets and all of this to get the bird out. I walked over and picked it up and walked out of it there that day for $600. Every bit of it was line for line, but it started with go to that store.
Exactly.
And I did that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, again, totally different scenarios,
Yeah.
exact same dynamic.
Exactly.
You jumped in, and I think we carried over a thought from when we were visiting, trying to get the computer to start today. Tell me about the Bigfoot factor.
Well,
Because I don't think everybody will understand what that reference was.
okay, understand. I do a podcast. It's not called Bigfoot. It's just Linda Eastburn YouTube channel because I had no idea Bigfoot was going to come into my life. I had no interest in Bigfoot. Everybody in the Bigfoot world knows that it was a total accident that this happened. But I was actually doing a show called Intuitive Journeys, and I had several people, and the show basis was on me teaching people how to do remote viewing, and then we would film that, and we would see how accurate they could be in seeing things that were not in our presence. And that show was going fairly well. It was kind of a new concept for me, and I'd never done YouTube before. I had no idea how YouTube even worked at that time. But we put 10 episodes out, and we were continuing to film some more. But I realized that we were going to have new material, some new dynamic things to put on there besides just the things we had been doing. But I was just doing a little intuitive session for someone else, and then they switched around and did a little intuitive session for me. These were just like little one-question things. And at the time, she said, oh, and by the way, this information's been brought to you by Bigfoot. Well, that caught my attention because it was so out of the ordinary. I mean, it's like, this is not an interest of mine, and why would Bigfoot have a message for me?
Right.
It was just foreign to my thinking, and I could have just blown that off. But what happened was, within, I'd say a week or so, across my Facebook feed, there was an advertisement for a Bigfoot conference that was coming to this area. First one they'd ever had in this area, ever. And so I'm looking through all of the speakers, and I'm thinking, well, would there be one of those speakers, maybe one of those speakers that I could bring on the show, interview or something, or we could remote view something with them, make for a little bit more of an interesting dynamic on the Intuitive Journeys show. So there was one guy that he was a linguist, and a Navy-trained linguist, and he kind of caught my attention because I thought, well, he might be an interesting character to interview. I tried every way in the world to get in touch with him. He had no social media footprint whatsoever. I could not find him. I could see where he had taught at a military school in Kansas City. Other than that, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing about him. So I went to the conference just to meet him, just to talk to him. And he gave his talk, and afterwards, he was really busy talking to other people, but I spoke with his son, got an email, and I thought, I'll just send him an email and see if he's willing to do an interview. Did, and he was very open to that, and so I rented an Airbnb up Kansas City where he lived. Girlfriend and I, we went up there, spent a weekend, 3 cameras, got 6 hours of filming, and it was a lot of information, but the guy was just kind of like all over the place with his speaking. He was a very thorough person, but not necessarily in chronological order with things.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
So he had analyzed the Sierra Sounds. Now, the Sierra Sounds go back all the way back to the 70s, and this was up in the Sierra Mountains, and a man named Ron Moorhead and a few others had encountered this unusual language out there that they would hear, this kind of, it was a guttural, bizarre kind of thing. So they took recorders up there. This was so remote, they had to, I think, horseback for sure, getting up those mountains. But it was like a 2-day journey or so just to get to their location. And they had this little kind of makeshift camp that they had built, kind of a shack, that they could stay in and build their outside cooking, everything. So they would go up there and deer hunt, I think is what they were actually doing there. But they recorded these hours and hours and hours of this very bizarre sound that was coming from the wherever. And they had seen a Bigfoot up there at some point, but they didn't know for sure if this sound was a Bigfoot or not. But Scott Nelson, being the linguist, when he finally heard this, not that many years ago, he thought, this is a language. That's what he thought.
There are recognizable patterns here.
Yeah. So, and he wanted to take it through the same process he did for years and years and years in the Navy, analyzing linguistics. So he did that. So that was what the show was really about. So I came home, edited it down to an hour documentary, released that. And the weirdest thing is I had already moved on from my idea of YouTube was like, this isn't going anywhere. We will never get monetized at the rate we're going. And I just wanted to make film. I wanted to make documentary films instead of just doing this YouTube thing. So I was really my conscious mind was saying, But the thing that I was really asking for was to be able to do some film that caught on with a global audience. That's what I really wanted to do. And not thinking that Bigfoot would be in any way a global audience for me, nor would I be, invested in that whatsoever. But this is what happened. We released it. I think we filmed it in November, released it in February. My YouTube channel had only been up 3 months. I'm a little impatient, obviously, because I wanted it to be monetized the first month.
Yeah, why wouldn't it be? Yeah.
Yeah, and little did I know, only 3% of all YouTube channels are ever monetized. I didn't have those statistics at that time, so I was very impatient. But we released it on a Wednesday or Thursday. I remember being out of town. I was working on a crime documentary with my sister, just organizing that and writing the script for it. And I looked at it, and it was like, oh, wow, this is twice as many views as my other Intuitive Journeys show was. We released it separate from Intuitive Journeys. It was just a documentary on its own right called Bigfoot
Sure.
the Language. And it was like 850 some views. And I thought, that's pretty good. I was really impressed with that. It was really good. I got home. That was about 3:30 in the afternoon. I got home, went out for dinner, looked at it again. It was up to 2,500 views. As I am watching it, it's scooting up to 35, 45, 55. Today it's just under 300,000 views. It monetized my channel. And suddenly I have this enormous following of people that want me to continue doing Bigfoot stuff. And it's like, okay, I don't know anything about it. I am just like searching for anything, to film. There was a couple down at Forest. I thank God they were available. So we went down there and made a documentary called Bigfoot the Limits. On their property, and we did that and got all their story, and they had documented things so well. It was just fantastic. But, I realized there are not that many stories around. What am I going to do?
One of the things that I try to teach people is that when you are consciously manifesting, because we're all unconsciously manifesting all the time, when you're trying to shift to conscious manifestation, you have a goal, you have a target. I'm very big on establish what part of it matters to you, because in your story, and correct me if you don't agree, your story was about getting an anchor for a pathway of success. You were trying to figure out how to get the next endeavor going. You hadn't qualified how that happened, and the universe is like, okay, path of least resistance is Bigfoot, here you go. And so if how it happens had mattered to you, it might not have been Bigfoot. Right. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered to you was getting a thing launched, getting things moving in that regard. And I tell people all the time, the fewer criteria, the fewer preferences you put on whatever you're trying to manifest, and the fewer people you involve, actually, the easier it is to manifest something. And I loved your story. I'm jumping back a bit, but I loved your story about we didn't have the money to do the thing. When I started Sage Studio, I looked at my husband and I said, I'm going to start a yoga and wellness center. And he looks me dead in the eye and he said, 2 things. We don't have any money, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, and it's going to be fun to see how you do it because I've seen you in action. And it is about deciding what you are actually trying to do. If somebody says that they want a new job to me, they want to manifest a new job, I'm like, well, I've got questions. Is it because you need to make more money? Is it because you don't feel like you're being recognized? Is it because you don't feel like your skills are being used? Is it a hodgepodge mix of that? What is it? And they'll look at me and go, I've never felt validated in my career. Yeah. And I'll say, then the salary and the workplace doesn't matter. The boss that takes the time to validate you is what you're trying to manifest.
Right. Yeah.
Let's get down to what you're actually trying to create here. And I think that makes a huge shift. I also wanted to kind of nudge us over this way because when you were explaining to me the Bigfoot connection, I kind of want that to be my new band name. But I I loved our conversation about the similar experiences in unconnected people. And I jumped to sharing with you that I'd gone to Peru and done 10 days in the jungle ayahuasca journeys. And having studied it more on the backside of it, I had some of the same experiences that people globally have had, and I didn't have any of that in my head. Even at the time, I had a very big condor experience. Now, we weren't in the Andes. We were down in Amazon. And the images, the iconography, and everything that I brought through, the locals started calling me the Condor Man because it fit the lore and the legend so much just from what I'd seen in the journey. And it was archetypal. And then I shared with you, and this is where I want you to jump in. I had met what I would call a spirit guide, an entity, whatever language makes you comfortable, that explained to me that she was Pleiadian, but that it was a dimension, not a galaxy. That this was an altered universe, dimension, whatever you want to describe that as. And that made so much sense to me. And so I would love for you to jump in about the universal experiences that people have, this idea that some of the things may be physical manifestations that aren't necessarily in our physical waking reality. Jump in here.
Yeah, well, having been a researcher of paranormal, UFOs, now Bigfoot, it's like all over the place. But I'm going to have to go back to whenever I opened up my intuition. It was a time when channeling and being in touch with your guides and all this was so relevant and extremely popular subject matter. Not that it isn't still, probably. But I suffered from not knowing what I was connected to. There was information coming through, but I wasn't sure what, because I wasn't perceiving an entity or a being or a voice or anything. And I just kept asking, hoping maybe there would be someone I could say, okay, this is what I'm channeling. And every single time it just kept coming back. It's like, nope, universal mind. You're just connected to the universal mind. It's like a database. It was very objective. It wasn't,
Right.
It wasn't going to give me anything else. This is what you're connected to. This is what you're using.
It wasn't personality.
No, there was no personality attached and no life attached. It was everybody's life. Mm-hmm. It was everything, that past, present, future. It was everything. It was present there. So that's what I had to go with, and that's what I still go with. As to entities and beings, I think that I loved your definition of the Pleiades, not a place, but a dimension, because that puts it in a whole different ballgame. Right now, we have disclosure with all the UFO stuff. With this disclosure, I think everyone wants these alien beings to be from a planet, mm-hmm. not necessarily a place. And I keep going back to what I just keep getting is, no, they're kind of like bacteria on our planet. They're everywhere. You just can't see them because they're not in this dimensional realm that we are in. They come and go from it. But
they are out of phase with it.
Yes. That's a good way to phrase that.
To get very mm-hmm. quantum physics technical about it.
Right.
They're out of phase with it. And every now and then they're able to synchronize that phase. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that we have the firsthand experience or the palpable experience, I'm not a big follower, but I have seen enough clips and everything. And to be fair, at first I was very skeptical, and now I'm kind of on the team. Bashar, if you're familiar with Bashar, Bashar is a man whose last name is Anka. I always want to call him Paul Anka, and that's not right. But he has an entity named Bashar that channels through him. Yes. Who refers to himself, I will get this totally wrong, but refers to himself basically as a tech in a coalition from another dimension that we would normally refer to as aliens, mm-hmm. and is communicating about first contact, disclosure, all of these sorts of things. My experience, and I thought of him because you were talking about channeling. A lot of my early on career was channeled work. Mm-hmm. And I now have the understanding from the ayahuasca journey, I externalized a spirit guide because it was easier than accepting it as my own inner voice. And I had a moment of what I would call fusion mm-hmm. that happened in the jungle. But I remember we had talked about Hilltop. You and I both mm-hmm. were frequent Hilltop in our upcoming days. I don't know if you remember Laura Lewis, who was out there at times, mm-hmm. Dave and Laura. Mm-hmm. And every time I would say spirit guide, she would start laughing at me, and she goes, "Why do you always need a middleman? Why don't you just go to the source? Why don't you just plug into the thing?" And I always thought, "Oh, you're so arrogant. How can you, come on, my spirit guide is working here, and you're telling me to go beyond that." And I get it now. I understand it now. And I think part of it goes to a very deep awakening inside of somebody where you realize you are a child of the universe. We talk about the divine mother, the divine father. We're the divine child. And it's when you accept or believe in your seat at the table that no external thing is required.
That's true. Absolutely true. And I think there again we go back to, we're institutionalized, whether it be, family, whether it be, churches, whether it be schools, academia, all of that convinces us that none of that is real, and separation is the Western philosophy. But if you go back to unity, into oneness, we're not separate from all that.
I'm a big yoga person. And the philosophical side of yoga is the concept of Advaita, which is non-dualism, that we aren't separate from God, that we are a part of it. We're an extension of it. And I like to go on, because I love words, you cannot separate the artist and the art. You cannot separate the dance from the dancer. You can't take the singer out of the song. And so if we look at spirit, God, universe, the radiant one, whatever you want to call it, it's that artist, and we are that piece of art. It is the singer, and we are the song. It is the origin of it. We are the individualized expression of it. But you can't separate those things.
No, and I think that there again, because of our Western understanding of life, everything is separated. Everything is segmented and separated. And even, getting ready in a month or so to teach a class on body, mind, spirit. And it's like, even that we want to separate. This is here, this is here, this is here. It's like, no, this is whole. And it's just one of those ways of thinking.
We teach very traditional yoga here. And we do not have near the numbers of, say, the hot yoga studios, because they're focused on physical. And people are like, well, I'll deal with my mind later. And I go to church to deal with my spirit. And they want to compartmentalize and separate out and divide these things. And if you're divided within your own self, you cannot possibly find unity outside of yourself. You just can't.
Right. That's true.
You mentioned something early on, and I wanted to jump on this. You mentioned a person that had done a reading, give you a connection. I know who you're talking about. Many, many, many years ago, I gave a reading to that person, and I said, you need to put on the first psychic fair in Springfield. And she did.
Cool. Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, we're in a hotel up on North Glenstone, I believe it was. And what she didn't realize, I just think this is hilarious, what she didn't realize is the next conference room over was the statewide Baptist convention. And they found out who and what we were. They called the police. So the police showed up because in Springfield, Missouri, still true, it's illegal to give readings. There's a law in the books from the 1800s that you cannot predict the future other than scientific means.
Right.
So this cop shows up, and she grabs me, and she goes, you put me up to this. You've got to talk to them. And I went up, and I was like, yeah, we're doing our thing. What? And this officer looked at me. Now, this is back, early 90s probably. He looked at me and said, we had to respond because it's on the books. And he said, I'm going to suggest you guys keep the door closed as much as you can. Try not to draw attention because these people just don't like you. But this is the most peaceful group of people that we've been called out on in forever. Just try to give them a wide berth. And we did, and it was fine, and it all went wonderfully and all of that. But I just wanted to piggyback on the idea. She got a reading that made no sense, something that had never happened before, and then just acted on it. And in that scenario, there were so many pieces that came together for that to happen. Or you're talking about the property you bought, so many pieces coming together in all of that. I think that we have such a need to understand the mechanism and how that we stop ourselves from manifesting things all the time.
Yeah, I think we have to have logic and reasoning behind it, and sometimes there isn't logic and reasoning behind it. You know, it's just this is it. This is it. Either you can go forward with it or abort it, but this is what it is. And we try to make sense of, and most of the time we talk ourselves out of things.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I see people doing mostly is they put themselves in a tiny little box.
That
and they
deep part
simply
that says,
talk
I don't
themselves out of
deserve it.
Yeah, I don't deserve it. I can't do that. It would never work out anyway. You know, all of those excuses. So they can't. And my real big thing is, you know, create the life you want. You don't have to stay in those limitations.
I would love to hear your opinion on a philosophy that I have. I think that manifesting is kind of a misleading word. I don't think we create something out of nothing. I don't think we create things that didn't exist.
Right.
I'm a big believer that, you know, where's the money going to come from? Well, my answer is wherever it is right now. It already exists. You know, I want the new job. Well, they're not going to mystically create a job out of nowhere that didn't exist before. You're trying to magnetize yourself or align yourself with the opportunity for that job or that car or that house or that relationship or whatever it is you're trying to manifest. And so I think people get stuck on this fantastical idea of creating something out of nothing, and their mind locks up on that. And when I begin to describe to them, no, it already exists. You already exist. We're just trying to get you to exist in the same spot.
Right, exactly. And that's the point. It's like that's the whole point of Inspire Your Way to Power and Success is being able to locate that, you know, to be able to get in sync with that so that your paths can cross. Because otherwise you'll miss that opportunity. You know, it may be sitting right there, but you've got to give yourself the opportunity to mesh with that. And that's where a lot of the intuitive work comes in, you know, where you're aligned with it, and it doesn't come from the thought. This is a big thing for me. It comes from the heart of intent. What is your intention? And I think you mentioned that briefly earlier, that, you know, if you know your intent, then you know what you're going for.
Right, and you know what you're pouring the energy into. I have a couple things I want to throw at that, and I love the way your brain works. You and I have, I think, such similar philosophies and such a different language, which always fascinates me.
Yeah.
Because one person's language will click with somebody, and the other person's language will click with the next person. I have people ask me all the time, was this manifesting or was it intuition? And I'm like, they're inseparable.
Oh, I got a story on that one.
But I always, and I want to hear it. I always describe it as throwing a boomerang. Most people think if you throw a boomerang, it comes back to the exact spot that it was thrown from. It doesn't. No. So to me, the manifestation is throw that boomerang. Intuition is saying take 2 steps to the left so you can catch it.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. Let me explain. This was way back early on when I was intuitive, but, you know, didn't understand anything at all. Not enough had happened yet, you know, for me to have good understanding. But I'm always curious. I'm always wanting to know, like, the inner what's going on here. So my husband and I were headed to Hot Springs, Arkansas, and it was well, that's really part of the story. Well, this is the story, I guess. So it's winter. And it's starting to rain. We get to Harrison, which is, you know, about an hour out, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, these roads are going to get slick, you know. And I was driving, I didn't want to drive on slick roads, so I just intuited, you know, okay, you know, what's it going to be like? You know, what are these roads going to be like? Is this going to be safe? Are we going to be sliding all over the Ozark Mountains, you know, all the way down to Hot Springs? And what I got clearly was just outside of Little Rock, there's a town called Conway, and I heard clearly, when you get to Conway, it will be dry roads from there on, so you're going to be safe, you know, getting there. So when we got to Conway, guess what? Everything stopped. No rain, dry pavement. We got on to Hot Springs, had a nice little time, and on the way home, I started thinking about that. I thought, well, now, did I just intuitively know this, or did I manifest this, you know? Right. And what came back was both. Both. Because as we see it, we contribute to creating it.
Yes.
And it's that light, and that's part of the SPY program. It really is a little bit of science. I worked with a physicist on this to be able to understand how that happens. And it's actually an energy field that you create as you are seeing it. So you always, this is so vital, want to see the highest, most positive opportunities that are out there, not the things that are going to be devastating.
And
because,
we are deep into quantum physics now.
yes, we are.
We're deep into quantum realities and parallel universes.
Yes.
And I wholeheartedly ascribe to that because there was the version where you got down there and the roads were worse.
That's true. And so by seeing the highest and best, and what dictates that, there again, it's intent. A lot of that is just pure self-love. It's being able to come from that. Love is a higher vibration, and love is always going to direct you towards something that's positive or good for you. So you always want to see things intuitively from the highest level of positive self-love intent and love for the universe too, not just yourself. And doing readings, I'm sure you work off of this same principle. I found out a long time ago, if I am going to help anyone, I'm going to have to come from compassion, no ego, just compassion from my heart. If my heart isn't in the right place, I have no business doing this.
I think you'll find this fascinating. One of my big teachings about manifesting is everybody says thoughts create reality. I disagree.
I disagree too.
I think emotions do.
I think it's really our light, the light from our heart that creates things in our world.
I have a technique that I ask people to use called borrowing an emotion. So let's say you're trying to manifest a new car. Go back in your mind to when you were 8 years old and you got that bicycle for Christmas, the vehicle, the means of transportation that you were so excited and felt so good about. Now borrow that emotion and put it into the intention.
Yes.
And I actually don't like the word intention. I like to use the word expectation.
That's a good one too, yeah.
My shorthand explanation, a woman who intends to have a baby is in a very different state than someone who's expecting a child. When you expect it, you know it's already real. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. And with the spy technique, you actually see it. You actually see it's out there, Now it's just a matter of aligning yourself to get to that between point A and point B. When I saw the price that this house was going to sell for at the auction, now we had 3 weeks. If I had not seen that, we would not have been prepared.
Right.
So now I have that not only expectation of it selling for $300, but now we have the time of preparation, and so then we can be ready for it.
And the expectation of all of those things coming in the line in that time frame.
Yes, yes.
Now, I also have, and keep in mind the name of the podcast, I also have a philosophy that I'm very big on because everybody's like, you need to word it just right, and you need to have it just exactly. I happen to believe that Spirit's not a dumbass.
Exactly. Everyone is saying, you have the words do this or words do that. I thought, you know what? I honestly believe that Spirit knows when I am just joking around.
Yeah, I'm
regardless of the words I use.
I'm pretty sure the creative force of the universe can get me. And I think that people, if you front load that belief that there is a magical formula that if you get all of the pieces right, it's like the lottery and you win, or otherwise you don't.
Right, like you have to but don't you think it's because we've done this a lot that we've figured some of this out?
Oh, I think so, yeah. I am constantly reminded, my inner circle, the people who, the people that I give the authority to call me into check, often remind me that I'm not like everybody else. Yeah. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like the most average, normal person in the world. Look at me. And, with my purple fingernails and my tattoos. Yeah, that's a cute delusion they're living in. But they're always like, it's not that I think about the world differently. I just process it differently. I see it differently. And it's experience. I have an incredible faith, but my incredible faith is born from experience.
Yep.
I've seen far too much to doubt at this point. I have seen too many stories that don't make sense in a linear fashion. There have been too many. You've done readings, you understand, but I love when people are like, oh, you just say the same thing to everybody. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
I had a lady sitting here. Now, I don't consider myself a medium.
No, I don't either.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But I don't think I can dial a spirit. And so I'm talking to this woman. I said, it's your grandfather and he's holding a little yellow truck. And she sort of looked at me. I said, like a little toy truck, like a Tonka truck. She bursts into tears and explains to me that he was the one who designed the first Tonka truck toy.
Oh my goodness. Talking about spot on.
Yeah, and both of us were just like, well, let's take a moment for that one.
Yeah,
But
yes.
that was one sentence. It's a little yellow truck like a Tonka truck. But that changed her entire way of believing and thinking and opened up so many possibilities that had nothing to do with what we were talking about.
Right.
And it's when we get out of our own way enough that we can see those things working, that our life begins to change. And we begin to open up to there's nothing but possibility.
Right. That is absolutely true. It's all there. You just, it's just lining yourself with it. That's the only thing. That's the only thing missing between here and there. And there's so many possibilities in life. Yes.
So tell me what the future holds for Linda. Where do you see your work going next?
Well, I have this course, the SPY course, and that is beginning to get attention at this point in time. So my goal is to just keep promoting that, keep working with letting people know it's available.
Shameless self-promotion. Tell people
Yeah.
where they can find it. Give us a
yes,
website.
Just lindaeastburn.com. You can find anything you need, including information how to get in touch with me. So my goal is to really just get that out there. Now I do other classes too. I do still doing the health intuitive work, still teaching and selling that class too. And I still do hypnosis, where I began. It all started kind of back there that far. So I'm still doing all of that. And who knows? Tomorrow I may come up with another class.
Absolutely.
So yes, you can.
No, it was funny. I said something to you earlier about, don't you think it gets to a point where you have to be the teacher? And you said it's always been about teaching for me.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
From vacation Bible school teaching up to where I am now, and I don't see any difference
Right.
in it. Just trying to show people some spirit.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, if I know it, you're going to know it.
Yeah.
I don't hide behind any kind of, oh, this is special. No, it's like, no, you can do it too. It's just a matter of desire. You have to want to. It has to be something that you desire because you won't be motivated otherwise.
And more of it, I think, is about deleting old programs or thought processes as much as ever learning anything.
Right. A lot of it. Get out of your own way, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is we've heard professionally, we've talked about your spirit work and all of that. Tell me about you. What do we have pets? What is our favorite vacation?
Oh, I had to put down my pet about 1.5 years ago, but he was such a sweetie. Oh, goodness. And that was a learning experience. It was the only pet I ever had, and actually my nephew brought him to my house, but he was old, and he could not walk very well, so I would pick him up, and what I recognized, there was such a sync between his heart and my heart, because every time I was with him, it was like it just gave him my energy, just gave him my energy, and when he died, I developed 2 heartbeats. It was so funny, and I honestly believe that part of that was because I had just become so accustomed to his heart beating with my heart. So.
I just read a fascinating thing. I didn't read it. It was on a podcast that I was watching. It is documented. This is not woo-woo anything. That I don't remember the range, but it was up to like all the way across a room. If you make eye contact with somebody for 30 seconds, your heartbeats begin to sync.
That makes total sense. Yes.
In as little as 30 seconds, just looking at somebody.
Yeah.
So we've been sitting here this whole time.
we
And
are.
if somebody
Yes.
were to test us right now, our heartbeats would be very in sync with
Right.
one another.
Yes.
And it goes to very big on mantras and throughout different cultures. In Lakesh Alakin is from the Mayan. And it means, I am another you, you are another me.
Yes.
And when you get to that with people, then you can begin to extend that out. If you recognize, if we look at each other, we kind of become one. It opens up the door to, if I look at that prosperity in a certain way, we can become one. We can synchronize. If I look at that new house, then I can become synchronistic with that. And once you step into synchronicity, which is my favorite topic, then things just begin to flow.
This is true, and I think in that process of manifesting, like things become kind of holographic before, and that's when they become synchronistic. It's like we haven't quite gotten fully engaged with it. It hasn't quite come into our life yet, but it's nearly there. And so those synchronicities start happening because it is almost there. It's holographic at that point. It's not fully physical, but it's almost physical.
So that is a matter of adjusting phase.
Yes.
To go back to our
Yes.
previous thing. And I mean, your answer is probably a lot like mine. When people ask me what I do for fun, this is it. I mean, I have my pets, and I have my husband, and I have we have activities we do and all of that. But this is what I love.
You're right.
What does Linda Eastburn do for fun?
Well, I have an intuitive group that meets every Saturday, and we just explore the world. I mean, just anything and everything. I'm also still into the research. I'm part of a lot of different groups that get together. I'm not married, so I have lots of freedom. My schedule is my own. I can do whatever I want to do and travel whenever I want to and be with whomever I want to. So my life is full. It's absolutely busy. There's no doubt about that. I'm starting to travel again with my work, so I'm starting to get back out there and going to be in Springdale, Arkansas at a conference in September, and it's
Fantastic.
just starting to grow again. This is kind of a comeback because in 2013, now this is an interesting manifestation that was really from the heart. In 2013, I was traveling all over. Actually, I had a retreat that I'd created, and people were coming all the way from France, to this retreat. But my mom had a stroke. I went ahead and did that week-long retreat, but it was difficult because she was at that point in rehab and trying to and she didn't. She was a country girl that didn't do well in that social setting. Plus, her body had just failed her. Too.
Right.
But I did that retreat, but I had to decide. I had to make a decision at that point. Do I stay? Do I take care of my parents, or do I go ahead and do my work? And just place them in a home or whatever. My dad was still on the farm at that point, but they were like 90 at that time frame. So I decided, okay, it's going to take a lot for them to stay at the farm, but both of them wanted to. So it's going to take my care along with 24/7 care. My mom could no longer walk. So it's like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to pay for it? They had a little cash. I had a little cash in hand. And so it's like, okay, I think I can do it. I could, there again, that's trusting, it's stepping down. It's like, okay, universe, help me. I bought 25 houses in the course of less than 1 year, got them up and running rentals, paid for their $250,000 a year bill for 24/7 care, literally. And it was like that. Every single house I was led to look at, I got it for nearly half price. How did this happen? And it was like just boom, it would rent out. A handyman came along to help me do this like the month just before I started. It was just like everything came together. It was like a blessing of the heart. But the really important, I wouldn't say it was the most important lesson. I mean, we did this, and it was a 5-year process. This literally was a long-term project. But the thing that I noticed most is like you can get so bogged down in a caretaker role and being so responsible for all of these things, plus being a caretaker. It was like the one thing I knew I had to do in order to not get ill or to have frustrations was just keep my heart open. Every single time I would start falling down into that lower vibration, it's just remember the love you have for them. And as long as I keep my heart chakra open, everything went perfectly fine. Everything went well. That was the intent, was to serve my parents as well as they'd served me in my lifetime.
I came up with this thought process just last week. I didn't know when I would have a moment to interject it, and you just provided me one.
Good.
And as with everything, I'm very interested in your perspective on this.
Yeah.
While I understand that love is an emotion, my philosophy, or what I'm working with, my theory presently, is we'll start with humans. If I love you, now I have a belief that you should love everybody, but let's get specific. If I love you, that is something that is happening solely within myself. That is an emotional experience. That is a vibe that I'm holding, an energy that I hold in regards to you. That doesn't actually affect you in any way until that caring motivates me to try to fulfill something within you.
Mm-hmm. That's possible. I think it probably is more of a vibration that has more impact than what you're describing.
You need to hear the second part.
Okay.
Because then if we expand that up to spirit, God,
Yes.
universe,
Yes.
it holds the love of wanting to fulfill us individually and radiates the potential of being able to do that out in multiple frequencies, multiple vibrations, up limitless, innumerable ones.
Right.
And so when I talk about healing somebody or offering a healing energy, because I don't believe we heal people, I think we create an atmosphere in which healing can occur.
Exactly.
Then I am allowing the love or the desire for fulfillment from spirit to manifest through my heart, because that's where we register love, which gives me the ability to extend that thing out to whatever. If I'm trying to do a reading, then spirit is fulfilling my desire to help that person by opening up intuition to give them the messages or the whatever it is that they're trying to receive. And so your statement of whatever you're trying to do, open your heart, I'm saying open the transceiver that both receives and transmits the vibrational component from the universe that we call love. But love itself is a standalone internal thing. The actions that are prompted by love, the energies that are offered, the sentiments, the actions, the follow-throughs, the care, the concern, the healing, the helping, the whatever. And so when you're saying open the heart in whatever you do, I can take that to almost a mechanical quality. That's the mechanism.
Yes, it opens up for all of that.
That is allowing that fulfillment desire from the universe to come through you to fulfill the desire of the person that's there, or the need of whatever is there. And I don't have that in eloquence in the way I'm explaining it yet.
Yeah, I think it's that we describe it as love because it's the only way we can identify with what we're trying to do, because we have experience with love. You know,
Yeah.
whether it be love for a person, a place, you know, an idea, whatever it is, we have that emotional connection with it, so we can identify it and call it that. But I think what it does is it opens up a field. It opens up a whole field of energy. And that energy then allows for all of those things that
Those
will
different
manifest
potentials
within
to come through.
Absolutely. And the other day, I was working on, because I'm teaching about healing at this one class I'm doing in September, and it's like this idea of incorporating love, and this is actually really fitting right into what I'm putting together on this. But the idea of opening up, we're all healers, you know, regardless if you want to call it a healer or not. If you can open up that field, it offers opportunity for healing to occur. But I said, you know, there's something about, you know, when a child falls down, scrapes their knee, and mom comes along and kisses the boo-boo. There is something actually very healing about that.
There's an energetic exchange right there.
There's an energetic exchange, and it may actually take some of the inflammation and some of the pain away, literally.
Yeah,
you know.
for real.
That didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, kiss the boo-boo.
I love that, because that is so true and so relatable for people. I'll expand on that. When people say to me, I don't know how to take action on something, I tell them to put themselves in the mind of the mother whose kid just scraped their knee.
Yes.
You know, if your kid's standing in traffic, you're not questioning what to do. You run out there, you grab it, and you don't care if the car hits you.
Right.
You're just doing the thing.
Right.
And so when you get to that instantaneous autopilot engage mode, that's when it gets really cool.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that was it with taking care of my parents for that 5-year span of time, and suddenly being thrust with managing 25 houses on top of that, on top of my other properties I was managing. It was like, okay, I'm on overload.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, how do I deal with this overload? And I recognized that this was going to either take me down or it was going to lift me up, one of the two. So it was a matter of this creating this field of love, you know, this opening up this field of love. It gave me the wind beneath my wings, so to speak, to be able to handle all of those things, because it was a lot of overload.
Yeah. Best line I heard, this is just silliness, but the best line I heard recently, I said something about I've got too many tabs open, and the person I said it to looked at me and she goes, I've got too many tabs on too many different computers open. And we can get overloaded,
We can.
but then when we step into grace, to use that word, it helps us prioritize, first of all.
Right.
Because I think a lot of us are doing things that we don't have to be doing. But it also increases our capacity. I'm always amazed at what I can do. I'm always amazed at how many things I can do, or what all I can pull off in whatever regard. And it goes to, like I said, I'm a traditional yoga teacher. I'm not Hindu, but in the Hindu pantheon we have Hanuman. Hanuman was able to achieve great feats because of his faith.
Yes.
Not because of necessarily his belief in himself, but because of his faith in the universe, of how it all worked. And in that moment, he found the ability inside of his own self. And I think that for some of us, that idea of faith or defining what we believe in or just admitting we believe in something begins to open up this entire shift and change in your consciousness. And I'm going to go back to what I said before. It gets to a moment where you feel like, oh, wow, I'm a part of all of it too. I deserve it as much as anybody else. Why am I listening to everybody's bullshit in my head about how I don't?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the biggest hurdle you'll overcome in manifesting or creating anything in your life is going to be your own self-limitations.
Absolutely. Every step of the way. Mm-hmm. So I love, you and I are so the same and so different. I love because I said, what do you do for fun? And you said research.
That is so true.
And, attending this conference or doing my work, and it's like, I totally get that because I don't hear a new word without looking it up. I don't hear a concept without reading about it. I guarantee you I will be reading up on Bigfoot this week just because.
The curious mind. That's the thing.
It came across my radar, so it's got to be engaged.
Right.
But I like to remind everybody, have fun with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Embrace joy. I have so many people that when I talk to them about intuition, and this is my sarcasm coming out, but, oh, I know, and I'm an empath, and it's always so hard for me. And I'm like, if you're actually an empath, get around some happy people. You know you're supposed to pick up all the emotions, not just the shit ones. Right, exactly. Get around some happy people and let that empathy fire off and make you feel good for a change.
Exactly, yes, it works both ways.
But the idea of embracing spirit, I understand there's work to do. I understand there's a lot of deconstruction. I understand that we are all a work in progress. I absolutely get that. It's what my entire life is about. But it's supposed to feel good. Mm-hmm. We're talking about love.
Yeah, and if you're not motivating yourself in that fashion, then if you see it as a chore, you see it as hard, you see it as a mountain you have to climb, then it may not be fun. But for me, I mean, it was every step of the way was there again, that curiosity in me. It was satisfying, like the mystery that, it's like finding your way out of a maze.
Yes.
It was fun.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'll share this briefly before we wrap up because it goes to what you were just saying. Years ago, I was never physically fit. I was high school and youth and 20s and 30s. I went from incredibly skinny in high school to overweight in my 30s and, just all of this. And I decided I was going to transform myself out of self-loathing. Mm-hmm. Nothing happened. I would go to the gym, I would work out, I would lift weights, I would do this, I would do that. Never felt better, never liked myself, didn't like what I saw in the mirror, nothing, zero change, if anything, a negative change. And I don't really know what triggered it, but I woke up one day and I was like, I wonder if I did this because I love myself instead. Totally transformed. Mm-hmm. Absolute physical transformation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Able to do things at this age that I couldn't do at half this age. Yeah. And that opened up. You can apply that to anything. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're looking for, this is a little long-winded, but I had a client recently who I convinced her to leave an abusive relationship, and she's staying at Harmony House here in town. We do a charity for Harmony House every year with our studio. Yeah. And she came in and she was just beat down. She's like, I have no income. I've got 4 kids. One of them has autism. We're living in a shelter. We've got nothing. And I said, do you like chocolate chip cookies? And she was like, I don't get it. Sure. And I said, no, first of all, it's a chocolate chip cookie. Nobody says, no, I don't like them. So let's start there. Mm-hmm. And I said, you're looking for a chocolate chip cookie. And she goes, I don't get it. And I said, no, sit with me. Picture it. Imagine what it tastes like. I want you to actually imagine a chocolate chip cookie. and I want you to ask the universe to give you a chocolate chip cookie. And I want you to believe with your whole heart that the universe is going to give you a chocolate chip cookie. She came in the next time, and she said, guess what they served in the cafeteria at Harmony House tonight for dessert? We had chocolate chip cookies. And I said, and what did that do for you? And she said, well, I can't ignore that we talked about it in your office, and then it was right there. And she said, I wasn't in the space to even hear what you were saying, but you got me to think about it. And she said this directly to me, which is fair play. She goes, and you're enough of a smart ass that I had to laugh about it. And that made me feel good for a brief minute. And so I felt good and thought about chocolate chip cookies. And then they gave us one. And I looked at her, I go, what do you want next?
That's perfect. That is absolutely perfect.
Because it opened up in her mind that it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
Follow up to that story? Her answer was, I want my own home, but they say it's going to be a year before I can get housing. She came in the next week and I said, what's the update? And she goes, they approved me for housing next month.
Yes.
She said, it doesn't make sense.
Everything's possible.
I said, it makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes we block ourselves because we start too big.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true.
Start with a chocolate chip cookie. Start with a flower. Start with sending that message out that you want to talk to that person you haven't talked to in a long time. Find the little thing that you can do. And when it happens, validate the hell out of it.
Yeah, because you have to build those stair steps. And that's what that does.
And you begin to learn the dialogue. You begin to learn the language.
Exactly.
Linda, you're a delight. We were going to have to wrap up because I get long-winded, and I will keep you here all day and pick your brain about things because I love the way your brain works. Tell everybody again, spell it out so that they know how to find you.
You can always find me on Facebook, just Linda Eastburn on Facebook, and you can always go to my website, lindaeastburn.com.
And it's just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds.
Check it out, everybody. I highly recommend it. Some of her courses are amazing. Hopefully you'll find some place where she's speaking in the future. If you've got some sort of connection that you think that she might fit with, drop her a line and help her to build that community that she's working so hard to do. And if you'd like to be a guest on My Shaman Says, the podcast, reach out to me. You'll find me on all of the socials. You know the deal. Like, share, comment, do the thing. We all know how it works. You can find me at ShaneKnox.com through all of the socials. You can find me on my website. And remember, be kind to yourself and everyone else.